Hi, Janis. Welcome to Struggle to Strength.
Hi,
So glad to have you with me today.
thank you.
So, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. I'm Mary Beth Simone, and I am the CEO of Niche Partnership Consulting. And I teach entrepreneurs and professionals how to create their contingency plan to empower their second in command to keep business and life running smoothly. And my business was a result of experiencing a personal struggle. And through this program, my goal is to highlight the strengths that my guests and my clients have developed as a result of their struggles. So today, if you are with us live, feel free to post a comment and Janice and I will see that. If you have any questions as we're having this conversation, please feel free to ask your question and Janice and I will make sure that we answer them. And even if you're watching the replay, feel free to post a question and we'll monitor it and come back and answer them. So Janice, thank you again for joining me today. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to focus our conversation on how you reclaimed your strength and power after being married to a narcissist. So before we dive in, can you share a little bit about your background and your work with our listeners?
Sure, absolutely. So, I have been in real estate. I got here accidentally 25 years ago, and through the years, it sort of grew from being an agent. I ended up opening my own brokerage about, I guess, 8 or 9 years ago. And then about 5 years ago, I also started teaching real estate. And then, if having two businesses isn't enough, Pennsylvania and New Jersey, I said, hey, why not open a school? I have nothing else to do. So I just opened up a real estate academy in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, and classes start in a couple of weeks. So it's a little crazy in a good way. And that's what I do. I teach, I train mentors, and do all things real estate. I'm a real estate nerd.
I love it, and I love following you on social media. I love your content and everything that you're doing. Uh, so Janice and I met. I think this is kind of interesting. In the beginning of the pandemic, we met on one of Nikki Roush's free webinars. We were both attending, and I introduced myself in the chat, like we often do in a webinar. And Janice saw it and private messaged me and said, we need to talk. I need to find out more about what you do. And Janice became a client. So that's just a shout out to make sure that you introduce yourself, in a way, a compelling way when you're on webinars so that you might attract some attention of the people who are attending.
Absolutely.
You never know who
And make
you're going to meet.
connections too. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I love about it. And it's not just webinars. I mean, webinars especially, it's a weird animal and we're in a weird time, but just life in general, just looking people in the eye and talking, because you find out. I had the most amazing conversation that I've had in months last night at the dog park. The dog park that I go to 3 times a day, every single day. And we just started talking, and I was there for half an hour. My dog was like, can we go already? And it's because you just open up your mouth. I think someone said they liked my Hamilton hair, and then we started talking forever. It was so great. So open your mouth and say hi to people.
That's great. That's great. It's such an excellent point. Okay, so where did I want to go here? Okay, so can you set the stage and describe for us what was happening when you first realized that you were married to a narcissist?
All right. Well, first I have to say that when we came up with this topic, when you asked me to do this, I thought it was so easy because it's been years. It was a really hard struggle, but I'm on the other side. And I just want to say, before we hit record or play, whatever it is, we started talking, and I started reliving it for a minute. And I want to say, and I'm fine, but I want to say it all came flooding back, and the feelings are there. I'm no therapist, but this is serious, serious stuff. And like I said too in the beginning, usually everything that I do when I come on and do these webinars and podcasts and stuff is always about my business in some way, because that's what I do. And this one isn't. But I was more excited about doing this than just about anything I've done in a really long time, because it was so freaking hard that I felt so alone and so beat up and so gaslit and so insane and so what's wrong with me. And it's like I was drowning and no one could help me. And if I ever thought that I would be able to sit here now relatively straight faced without being hysterical and shaking and talking about it, I wouldn't have believed it. And so if I could come on here today and reach one person and just throw out one little hair of a lifeline so that you know there is another side, that you will be okay, it will have been worth it for me, even if I start crying. So I just have to set the stage with that because it was freaking intense. So my sister was in the process of dying, and I was dating somebody, and I latched onto him, and I found all this out afterwards with lots of therapy. And I latched onto him, and I knew from the beginning that it was wrong, but it felt familiar. And that's a problem. Sometimes things aren't right, but they feel familiar, and so we go into those patterns. And so I knew pretty quickly that something was wrong, but what happens is you get sort of wrapped up in this language that's used and these processes and these habits. And bit by bit, I started to lose myself. And it was like being the frog in the water, and they turn it up and then it starts to boil, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's how it happened.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And just that, and your sentiment of sharing your story to help someone else, because when we're in the middle of something like that, we do feel like we're the only one.
And you don't, and there are people to help you, but I always say, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're going through something that's just so terrifying, your basic needs aren't even being met, you're in survival mode, and it's so hard to even reach out. You don't even know where to go sometimes. And if someone comes across this and I could be that person, that gateway drug into healing, my time on this planet will have been worth it, seriously.
Well said. Very well said. So you're together. Were you guys were you married before you figured out?
No, no. I'm sorry. I knew it before I married him. I didn't know the word. I didn't know that it had a label, but I knew it wasn't healthy. And I mean, I can't even believe I'm saying this. You guys are going to think I'm insane, but I literally married him upstairs from the venue in front of the Justice of the Peace before we went downstairs. When we went downstairs, we got married. It was fake. We were already married. And the reason why I did it was because I knew if I didn't do it upstairs, I wasn't doing it. And I was never somebody that wanted to get married. So it wasn't like I was under this pressure. Oh, I have to get married. My best friend just said to me, Jill was dying. My sister was dying, and I went bananas.
Yeah.
I grabbed on, and I did. And I knew.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So you're married. Can you take us back to the time when you realized that you needed to start creating a strategy to regain your strength and power, maybe to find a way out? What point was that?
Okay. So it was my life all day, every day, but I haven't talked about this in a while. So it was 2005, and I got a hysterectomy. And I got a hysterectomy because we have the BRCA gene in our family, which is how my sister died. So as a preventative measure, I went and I had a hysterectomy. I'd had my second child, and I went on and had a hysterectomy. So I thought it was going to be a piece of cake because I had 2 C-sections and I'm a tough cookie. It was not a piece of cake. I was in more pain than I've ever been in my life, and I don't take painkillers. Like, I'm a tough cookie. I got home from the hospital, and I had two kids in diapers, and I was still married, and I could barely get out of bed. I could barely walk, I could barely do anything. And we were just not getting along. And it was Yom Kippur, and we were at home, and it was time to get up and go to a friend's house to break the fast. And I could barely get out of bed to go to the bathroom. I was in so much pain. And he left and took the kids to break the fast and left me home by myself. And I laid in the bed and I cried. I had never felt lonelier in my life. And I said to myself, the minute I get better, I'm leaving. The next day, I got up and he was changing a diaper, angry because he had to leave for work, and I was still in bed. And I got up and I relieved him of changing the diaper, barely able to stand. And I said, go. I couldn't even wait until I was better because it was that bad. And I remember telling my father that night, and my father was not a fan of his. And my father said to me, why can't you wait until you're better? Even though he wanted me to leave. He said, why can't you wait until you're better? And I said, you don't understand. I will die if I don't leave. It will kill me if I don't leave. And I had to hit rock bottom to be able to have the strength to do it. And we split up that day.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's intense.
Yep. It was intense.
Wow. That must have taken so much. If you're not feeling well, you have two kids to take care of, and you're still ready to say goodbye.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone is with us live, feel free to put a comment in or ask a question, and we will do our best to answer any questions while we're having this conversation. Okay, so what was your support process as you were going through reclaiming your strength, building yourself back up, and trying to step back into your power?
Right. Well, this was the hard part, because I don't know if you've ever become fluent in Narcissist, but I unfortunately did. And it's a language in and of itself. It's abusive and it's horrible. And the scary thing is that after someone is speaking to you like that for time, years and years, and it wasn't that long. We were only together, I think, a total of 4 years. And I'm surprised I lasted that long. And including from the day we met to the day we split up. We met, we were married less than a year later. I had 2 children, and then we were done, right? Whatever. I knew. So, but when someone speaks to you like that, you start to speak that language, and then you start justifying it and explaining it to people. And so the problem was, the people closest to me were tired of hearing it. They didn't have the patience, because and it was nothing against them. It wasn't like they weren't there for me, but how much can you hear when you're watching somebody that you love act stupid? Because and I'm a strong person, and I let myself disappear. And so I had to go to outside help, and I found the most amazing therapist, and I would love to shout her out because she saved my life.
Go for it.
Her name is Arlene Foreman, and she's in Ardmore, and you could just go to arleneforeman.com, and I will tell you, she saved my life. And it took me a long time, because without going into and I'm no therapist, a lot of times people end up with a narcissist because they were raised by one, or because they had, right? So I had a lot of stuff to unpack that happened way before I met my ex-husband. He is who he is. And I've gotten to the point now, I've completely forgiven him and even thanked him for being my best teacher. So this is not about trashing him, because he's fine the way he is. This is about me and what I fell into. So I had a lot of work to do to unpack my whole upbringing. And I always say Arlene raised me. She saved my life. And it took me a long time, not because she's not good, but because I had a lot of growing up to do. And I would not be the person that I am today if I hadn't gone through what I had gone through. And that's why I'm able now to thank him for being my greatest teacher and to thank her for helping raise me. And she said so many things to me over the course of the years, but two things that she said to me stand out so much. Because the thing about being with a narcissist, for me anyway, was I was always trying to just explain something in a different way so he would get it. If I say it this way, if I do it that way, I'm looking right at him. He married me. He had 2 children with me. We lived together. We own property together. That's the real estate side of me. So we do all these things, but he doesn't even see me. And it made me crazy because I kept trying all these different ways. And Arlene said to me one day, would you holler at the blind man for not complimenting your pretty dress? And I just went, I see it now. I see it now. And that to me was the pivotal moment where I started going from just treading water and, survival mode to healing.
That's fantastic. I love those little nuggets when a therapist will give you something that, or even a close friend that will stay with you. The words stay with you for the rest of your life, and it, changes your perspective. So many things. So one thing that's coming up for me is I'm thinking, oh, I could see that would be the teacher in you too. So you're taking responsibility for your delivery. Like, oh, I just didn't say it in a way that he could receive it. Let me try another way.
Right.
Right. So thoughtful of you to do that. But
well, I have this example because, and here's something that I probably should have said in the beginning is that what is a narcissist? Because you could be with somebody, and again, I'm not a therapist, and I only know this because my therapist had him in session and said he's a narcissist. She's the one that gave me that term, and then I started reading about it and searching, and he fit everything perfectly, at least the way he was with me. Again, I don't want to trash the man, but one of the things is a perfect example is that once we split up, I had the kids, we had 50-50-ish, but I had most of the, I fell into the default woman, mother, parent, and I did the pickups and the drop-offs and all that stuff while working full-time. And there was a day when my son was sick and he stayed home from school, and it was my ex-husband's date to pick him up, but I ended up with the child sick all day and I couldn't go to work. So I called him and I said, can you please come early today? Can you please come early? Working, I'm busy and whatever. He finally shows up maybe 20 minutes early. I'd asked him in that morning, come early. He shows up and he had a Hanukkah gift for me. He had stopped at the spa on the way from his office to my house or my apartment, wherever I was, to buy me a gift. We were still in that weird phase where we were still codependent and trying to get back together, that kind of thing that clearly never worked. And he stopped to get me a gift. And I took the gift and when he left, I just lost it because how could I be so invisible as a human? All day I've been saying, I have this sick child. I'm taking care of him. I have to go to work. I haven't showered in days. And you stop and buy me a gift. The gift wasn't about me. The gift would have been if you would have came early and relieved me so I could go to work. And I just thought that was just so painful. And that's what narcissism is. And in his mind, if I could take a gander into his mind, he thought he was doing something really nice for me. He bought me a gift. How can you say that's not nice?
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Because I've never really known what narcissist behavior is, narcissistic behavior. And I think that in the last few years, it does get thrown around a lot. But it is somewhat new to me. I don't think that I've ever truly experienced, but I do know people.
You're not missing anything.
Who have. Yeah.
Do not put it on your bucket list. It's not a rite of passage.
Yeah. And I can relate to like not having the word for it because my mother had mental health challenges, and when I was describing it to a therapist once, I referred to it as delusional, and she said, "Oh, she was psychotic." So
Mm,
she was bipolar, and then she would have psychotic episodes, and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know what that was," you
right.
know? And I'm like,
And
"Oh, okay, I get it now."
right. And that's the thing about labels. Labels can be limiting and defining, and it's easy to slap on a label to someone, but they can also be really comforting because it makes you realize you're not crazy. You're
Yeah,
not making this up. And it just gives you sort of this benchmark or this, yes, they are limiting and defining, but we need them for comfort in some way. As long as we have some grace about it and we say, it doesn't define this person, but it defines their behavior, categorizes it, so we can have the language to have a conversation with someone and get support.
yeah.
Because if you don't have it, you just think the world is upside down, and you're like, I'm talking to this person, and here's another example of narcissism. I would say, I want to go here. Oh, you don't want to go there. What do you want to go there for? And who this is with everything I wanted to do. And bit by bit by bit by bit by bit, I disappeared.
Yeah, I could totally see how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So like for somebody with bipolar, there are treatments and medications and all of that kind of thing. Is there anything like that for someone with narcissistic?
I don't think so. And
Yeah.
the thing about being a narcissist, from what I know, is that they think they're fine. Because that's the thing, is I'm right. I'm always right. It's what Arlene explained to me. And if Arlene, if you're watching, if I get this wrong, please correct me. But here's the way she explained it to me is this part of their brain, I think it's the frontal cortex,
Yeah.
firing. And when you have empathy, when you're able to feel empathy, you're able to someone's able to say something and you're able to take that into your frontal cortex and then project it back out to them, right? Because we know sympathy is I feel bad for you. Empathy is I feel you. And that part doesn't work in a narcissist. And so they don't see you. They can't compliment your pretty dress because they don't see it. You could be standing there yelling, screaming, and crying, and all they can do is what they feel and what they believe, and it's like you don't exist. And that's why it's so lonely. It's like you disappear. It's horrible.
That makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now what do you do when like do you ever experience triggers or like old feelings coming up that you have to navigate even though that's long in the past?
Mm-hmm. I did for a really long time, and I hadn't until today when we first
Yeah.
started. I'm okay. No, it's actually good to feel that trigger in a way, because it brings me back to remember how far I've come, and feeling. And here's the thing about feelings. We all want to feel good, but we live in a world of duality. And the only way that you can feel good is to know what bad feels like. And so when I have a trigger, like I did before we came on camera, it reminded me how good I feel because I had a touch of how bad again for a moment. So I used to have triggers, and over time they have become farther and farther and farther and farther apart. I have to say there's certain things with my children when they come home and they say things, those can be triggers to me, because it's like they'll say a conversation they had, or they'll just say a word and it sounds like him, and I'm like, but I had a moment, and it was recently. It was back in, I guess, October. I was away. I was traveling at a convention, and I had sent an email to my son's school, and my ex-husband was on the email chain, and he wrote back and he just tore me to shreds. It was just abusive, whatever. We clearly don't get along at this point. We don't speak. But he sent this to me, and I was sitting in the seminar, and I looked at my phone, which was a mistake, and it just like, and I got completely triggered. And luckily we broke for lunch. And then I went up, I remember I was walking, and I did a post about this as well. I remember walking out of there and I said to myself, okay, I was in Atlanta, so it was nice out. And I said, I have three choices. I can go outside and get some fresh air. I can go to the bar and drink wine, which I was this close to doing, and it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's okay. Or I can go upstairs and tap. I do EFT tapping, if anyone does that. So I do EFT tapping. And I chose to go upstairs and tap. And I tapped and I tapped, and then I journaled, because tapping didn't quite get me over it, but I journaled. And then all of a sudden, writing through the journal, I had an amazing breakthrough. And the amazing breakthrough was that email had triggered me because it pointed out a weak spot that I had, something where I hadn't been showing up for my own children. I'd been doing a lot of traveling, and I just, whatever, the details don't matter. I hadn't been showing up enough for my own children. And I will tell you, I had this aha, I cried, and then I had this aha moment of complete and utter freedom and gratitude. And that's the moment where I said, he is my greatest teacher. And I did the forgiveness, where you thank someone, you forgive them, you say you're sorry, and you say that you love them. And I let it go. I let it go, and it's never, ever come back. And that moment, I will never forget for the rest of my life. But it took 17 years to get there. And it wasn't 17 hard years where I was every day, crying and sucking my thumb. It was just 17 years of, like, in the beginning was, and then every little bit, it just got easier and easier and easier. And then it would be long weeks, months in between triggers until finally I'm free. And I'm sure if he sees this or something and sends me some trashy email, I'll see it, I'll be like, and then I'll be okay. I mean, that's the risk of coming on LinkedIn, and clearly we don't have the same last name and no names, and I haven't used that name in years, but it's a small world, but it is what it is. And he's fine, he's fine, and he's an upstanding citizen. It's just this again, and if you know him, this is not me trashing him. This is me saying my relationship with somebody who's that way, and this is what it did to me. But I'm telling you, if he sees this, I know I'm getting an email, even though I just said that right now. You would think it would challenge him, and he wouldn't send it. He'll send it anyway. I'll get the email. I'll get the email, and I'll be like, and then I'll just get rid of it.
But thank you for sharing that process with us, because that's really beautiful, and how wonderful that you could take yourself through those steps and bring yourself back to feeling centered.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
That's what I'm grateful for. It was a lot of work. It's a life's work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And then, so what strengths did you develop from this experience?
A lot. One of the best strengths, I think there are two, but there may be more as I start thinking about this. One is gratitude. Because my gratitude practice, when someone first said to me, and I don't even remember the first time, practice gratitude, I was like, I'm not religious. I thought it was a religious thing. And I'm like, I'm not religious. I'm an atheist Jew. I don't do gratitude, right? And then I started bit by bit realizing what it is. And the way I liken gratitude is, you're sick, you have a cold or the flu, and there's a pile of dirty laundry in the corner. And from your bed, you're like, oh my God, I want to clean the laundry. I just want to get up and feel good enough to do the laundry. And then miraculously, a day or two later, you get out of bed and you, with earnest, do the laundry, and it's the happiest moment of your life. That's gratitude. That's gratitude. And if we can channel gratitude in the moments when we don't need them, right, then everything changes. And I was able to start practicing gratitude because of my relationship with him. And I'm at a better place in my life now than I ever have been. And now I also firmly believe in abundance, and I firmly believe in limitless potential, because I know that no matter what comes my way, I'm fine. I'm not saying bad things won't happen, but I'm fine, and I have the skills and the tools to handle no matter what comes my way. And those two things, I would not give up for anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely your position of power, your life force power,
Mhm.
regardless of your work or, yeah, your circumstances. That's
Yep.
beautiful. So, what advice do you have for someone who may be watching us today who feels like they're in a similar situation?
Oh, okay, there's a trigger. Okay, I'm okay. So the first thing is, and it doesn't have to be narcissism, it can be any kind of unhealthy, abusive. And here's another thing. I remember I used to say, I wish he would punch me in the face. Because if he punched me in the face, I thought that I would see it because it would be physical and that would make me leave. And so if you're being abused or you're in a situation that's abusive or unhealthy or just sucking out your life force, there is a way out, whether it's narcissism, alcoholism, and again, I'm not a therapist, but whatever it is, there is a way out. And I also remember in the beginning, we were talking about just look at somebody, make a connection, make eye contact, say hello. You don't know what's going to happen when you start talking to people. And when you start putting your intentions out there that are, I need to get out of this unhealthy situation, this unhealthy relationship, this whatever, what'll happen is your vibration changes and you'll start to notice the opportunities that have always been there in front of you. And the universe will bring you opportunities that weren't there before. And if I didn't reach out to you that day on that webinar, and I did because, and I wasn't trying to make a business connection. I have this thing where when people say what they do, a lot of times you go to, remember the days you used to go to a party, you go to a party and someone says, what do you do? And you tell them, and if it's not doctor, lawyer, or nurse, most of the time they don't know what you do. So people are just like, oh, that's great. I'm always the one that asks because it fascinates me. I always want to know what people do. And that's why I reached out to you that day. I was like, what is this? Like, I was so excited about it. I'm like, I have to know what this is. And then I said, I have to have this because I'm so glad that I did your program, like beyond, not just the fact that I got to meet you, but it was a freaking game changer for me, beyond. And so much has happened since we did our contingency plan. I'll tell you about it, but good stuff. But if you're struggling with anything, when you reach out to other humans, even if it's not directly for help, just for life force, just for connection, we are social creatures, just so you're not feeling alone. And I always say explore. I always say push every button, turn every lever, read everything, check every opportunity there is. And that's how you're going to find your solution, because nobody's going to hand it to you in a box.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And really, to have that open mind and to be exploring what's around you, who's around you, what are they doing? That's
Right.
great.
That's how you get lucky, is by being curious.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, very well said. So, and then my final question is, since you created your contingency plan, I am curious about what changes this brought up in your personal life, your business, because every person who I work with, something, especially for business owners, something really big tends to happen after they create their contingency plan.
Huge. So, excuse me. So one of the things, I did the whole plan, but one of the things in the contingency plan was, you said to me, you need to get a cosigner on your bank accounts. And it's true, because I run a business, and if God forbid something happens to me, because it will at some point, right? Somebody's got to get into my bank account and pay my employees and pay the bills and do whatever. So I brought my son in. He turned 18 in February. I brought him in and I made him, I'm single, so I made my kid, and he's fine with it. Well, guess what? Since that's happened, he took his real estate courses. My other son is about to take them. He's getting his license. They're both going to get their license. They bought their first property. They got busted for trying to buy property underage. I was a contributing factor to that. That's a whole other story. But they bought their first property. They owned a vacant lot. They formed an LLC. They did all this stuff. And it was, it was brewing somewhere, but him being a signer and sitting in that bank and signing on my business accounts and going through that contingency plan and learning about it was mostly personal. I didn't do the business part yet, but it touched on some business things.
Yes.
And I created a trust, and I did life insurance, and I did all these things. Thank you. And it got him completely invested to now, and he's at college, but he's getting his license, and it might be a side hustle, it might be a full-time thing, but ultimately it means I can hand over my brokerage to my kids, and I could just do something else, and I don't have to sell it or close it down. And it's the most amazing thing. And I have to say, it's because of the contingency plan. That never would have happened.
That is the best story, Janis. I am so happy for you and for your sons. I'm thrilled.
I'm plotting, like, I'm gonna have my kids working with me. How cool is that? Like, I couldn't have made that up any better than it turned out. And I didn't have to push them, which was the good thing.
That's wonderful. And some people might think, oh, that they were too young to talk to them about the contingency plan, but
We know our own kids. We know, maybe your kids are, and your own kids. My kids are just precocious, mature. That's just the way they are. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just observing, because it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, it is. I've talked to them like adults since they were born, and that's just the way they are. Their father's an entrepreneur, and he's very independent, and those are my kids. So they were fine, and every parent knows their kids and knows when it's the right time.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that story. So Janis, we're up against time. So what is the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to learn more about your academy or connect with you?
Sure, absolutely. So the academy is easy. It's jbrea.net for Janis Benstock Real Estate Academy.net. But I didn't want to make you type out that whole thing. And then if you just want to find me for my brokerage or whatever, just find me on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Just my name, Janis Benstock on Instagram and social media, and send me a DM, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, awesome. And I will put those links in the LinkedIn comments so people can connect with you there.
LinkedIn too. You could just find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Janis, for talking with us today and sharing your very personal story, because I feel like it is so generous of you to be this vulnerable with us. And I feel like it really helps people to see the strength in their own life that they might have only looked at it as a struggle.
So well said. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Janis.
Bye-bye.